I will go ahead and well, hello, welcome to Orange County, ICF Orange County here, and we are so grateful to have all of you here as we are joining Joanna Linderman for this wonderful Lindenbaum, sorry, wonderful thing on coaching today. And we did have some technical difficulties, but we are here and we are smiling and we are ready to engage with our speaker. So Joanna Linderbaum is the founder of the Applied Depth Institute and teaches master level facilitation and coaching skills to coaches, healers, therapists, and speakers so they can respond powerfully and effectively to the issues their clients bring to them. Using her 20 plus years of experience, and I got to say, what did you start when you were like 3? I mean, using her 20 plus years of experience and extensive background with coaching, human behavior, embodiment practices, and archetype and shadow, Joanna's approach to ethical and trauma-informed facilitation and coaching supports her students to gain a level of skill, confidence, and depth that the majority of their peers don't have. Graduates of her signature Sacred Depths Practitioner certification become the best of the best at what they do. Plus, they experience life-changing personal transformations as they step into this mastery level. All of this, in turn, positively impacts their businesses as their proven results then attract, this is kind of good, more renewals, referrals, and professional opportunities. Joanna has led hundreds of retreats, workshops, and trainings with thousands of participants and clients in the US and abroad. So again, it's my pleasure to welcome you today to ICF Orange County.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today and to share about self-sabotage and how we can really support our clients off of it, away from it. And I want to start actually by telling a short personal story that kind of really illustrates what self-sabotage can do. So this story goes back about 20 years, actually. It was back to when I was living in New York City, and I was still single back then. I had been dating a guy named Kevin, who I liked very much. And unfortunately, Kevin broke up with me. I was brokenhearted, and I didn't understand why, but he wanted to still be friends. And, we continued to be in touch. Now, Kevin was the head of creative at a huge marketing organization. And he called me up one day and he said, Joanna, we just signed Bono from U2 as one of our clients. Bono has a not-for-profit organization. He wants us to help us market it. He's flying in a few weeks. We're having a very intimate meeting with just 5 or 6 people. And I would love for you to be at that table because you've got so many great ideas to contribute. Now, I loved U2 so much and Bono, and I was so excited that Kevin had invited me. I said, yes, absolutely. I put it straight into my calendar. I hung up the phone, and as soon as I hung up the phone, wouldn't you know it, I started to have some interesting thoughts. And the first thought was, well, he didn't really want me to be there. He's just taking pity on me because he broke up with me. He doesn't really think I'm that smart or I'm that creative. And the thoughts started to spin from there. And lo and behold, the morning of the meeting with Bono, with only 5 or 6 people in the room, I woke up and I decided that I didn't need to show up. And not only did I not need to show up, but I didn't even need to tell Kevin because he didn't really want me to be there anyway. Now, this was before cell phones were very common and texting was happening all the time. I left the house for the day and I came back later that evening and there was a message waiting for me on the message machine, and it was from Kevin, and he was livid. He was so angry. Why didn't you show up? Like Bono flew into town, right? And all of a sudden, as I was listening to that message, I realized I messed that up. That was just my stuff in my head. He actually wanted me to be there. It was such a crucial moment where I could see so clearly that I got in my own way. It was self-sabotage, dictionary example. And I didn't exactly understand it in that moment as self-sabotage. I understood it as, nah, I did something to, I should have, this, that, and the other thing. And I really wish that in that moment, I would have recognized what I was actually doing. I also wish I was working with a coach at the time. I also wish that my coach would have done more than helped me strategize what to do differently next time. Because spoiler alert, there wasn't a next time after that. So that's an incredibly dramatic example of self-sabotage. We usually have much more subtle little ways of self-sabotaging, as do our clients. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. Because learning how to help your clients stop getting in their own way, what's required there is so much more than just do it differently. Let's strategize differently, or to just push through to get the actions done, right? So instead, today, we're going to explore some strategic and effective ways to support clients through their self-sabotaging behaviors, ways that take true human nature and true human transformation into account. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by defining what self-sabotage is, get a really good understanding of it, because it's actually deeper than we might think. And then from there, we're going to dive into a model that I've created that I call the Wheel of Self Sabotage. We're going to break the model down so that you can understand it better for yourself, for your clients. And then from there, we're going to do an overview of some specific strategies to support our clients to get off the wheel. This is something you should know as we go into this, because this is how I train and how I share. I am going to be inviting you to be looking at some of your own patterns when it comes to self-sabotage. The more that you can understand how this wheel of self-sabotage filters through your own life and your own work, the easier it's going to be for you to spot it and understand it when it comes up for your clients, and then to support them off of it. It does take a little bit to learn the full technique for the wheel. There are a number of steps, and they incorporate a number of different skills, techniques, and it also requires practice. Obviously, we're not going to have time for all of that today, but what we will be able to do, and these are the first steps and the most valuable, is that I'm going to give you, again, this understanding of the human nature, how it works, and then some overview pieces. The other thing to know, I already let Daryl know this, even though I like to talk, you'll see I like to talk a lot. I also want to hear from you. I don't want to talk the whole time. And it's so beautiful. We're a small group. So there's time for everybody to share, for us to be interactive. We're going to have moments where I'm going to ask you to journal. We're going to have moments where I'll ask you to share, and also share in the chat. If you can have your camera on, that would be great, just so that we can all really be together. I understand sometimes it's not possible. If not, but if you can have your camera on, it will help. Okay. So all that being said, let's just start with a definition of self-sabotage. And for the sake of today's session, this is how I'm going to frame it for us, and then we're going to go deeper into it. We can say that self-sabotage is when your client consciously or unconsciously gets in the way of achieving their own goals and their desired evolution. When your client consciously or unconsciously gets in the way of achieving their own goals and desired evolution. Now, I like to put things into categories, and some people find these two categories helpful. If not, don't worry about it. But I like to think of self-sabotage as falling into two buckets. Either what I call explicit single occurrence, self-sabotage, or patterned and subtle self-sabotage. Explicit single occurrence self-sabotage, it usually happens just once. Something maybe a little bit more dramatic, like my Bono example. And after, either during or at some point after, you can look back and you can see pretty clearly that was me getting in my own way, right? So for example, when you are late for a very important meeting, when you didn't study for the important test, when you didn't think about what you were going to wear for the presentation until the last moment, when you burned a bridge and told somebody off in an inappropriate way, right? Explicit, right? We can see it pretty clearly, if not during, some point after. And while it may not only happen once, hopefully it's and maybe it doesn't happen again. The second kind of self-sabotage is much sneakier. This is the patterned and subtle. This is the kind of self-sabotage where you get in your own way. You don't follow through on things. You don't take action, but you've got really good excuses. And because you have really good excuses, you keep on doing it. Things don't work out for you, but you don't quite realize that it's because it's self-sabotage. So let me give you some examples of this. Maybe for you, you consistently stay up just a little too late, and then you never really have enough energy during the day to get all the things done that you want to get done, right? It's patterned and subtle. Here's another example of patterned and subtle self-sabotage. Maybe you consistently overschedule yourself. And then because of that, you don't have enough space or bandwidth or time for the things that you really want to get done. You may not see that as self-sabotage. It's like, oh, I'm just so busy. I always have so many, right? Whatever it is. Another example, maybe you consistently don't prepare before an enrollment or sales conversation. And then because of that, consistently the sales conversations don't go so well. And then you don't end up with as many clients as you could have. I'll give two more examples of this. Maybe you've got this ongoing, if you have kids in the house, kind of like this ongoing low-level criticism of the messes that your kids make. And because of that, the environment in the house is one of struggle and distrust. You're never able to create that environment that you really want in the house. One more example, there's so many. This is one that I am guilty of. Maybe you have a food that you're not quite allergic to, but you know it doesn't really do well in your system, but you still eat it anyway, and then you end up not feeling quite right a lot of the time. Are you with me so far? Yeah. Okay. So probably the wheels are starting to turn. I'm going to ask you some questions to journal on to kind of get a little bit more clear and go deeper. What are one or two examples for you of explicit self-sabotage, the single occurrence? What are one or two times where that has happened for you? Single occurrence and explicit. And please feel free to share in the chat. It's good to see different examples. Anyone have any examples? Explicit, single occurrence. Maybe you have an example of patterned and subtle. So think about that one. What are some examples for you?
Joanna, I was going to say, like, I feel like the patterned and subtle, I can find more, but the explicit, it's like, can't think of any.
Yeah, that is not abnormal.
Okay.
Yeah, because usually they're pretty dramatic. So absolutely. So I'd love to hear some examples of the patterned and the subtle.
Yeah, just before we move on to that, I was going to say the explicit, maybe we're in denial of that. And that's why none of us are saying it. You know, it's like, no, I don't want to out myself with those or, oh, I never do that. You know, I mean, that again, you know, maybe that's even one of those own saboteurs is thinking we don't do this, you know, that we don't have this. And I think maybe denial, you know, I'm saying that jokingly, but the more I'm speaking, I'm thinking that might be very true, you know, because we don't want to think that we're doing something wrong to you know, to kind of derail ourselves from what we should be doing. So anyway, I don't want to, but if other people want to speak up, you know, definitely. Yeah, I mean, this is great.
I love that you're bringing that into the conversation. And this is when we get to strategies. This is why coaching can be so helpful, because oftentimes we can't see for ourselves when we could have done something differently, when it was self-sabotage. And I think you're right. I'm so glad you're sharing it. Sometimes it can be painful to say, you know, I didn't get that dream job because I showed up late for the interview, right? It can be hard to admit that to ourselves. Okay, so hopefully everybody at least has one example of some kind of self-sabotage. Here's another question. Pick one that you've got, and let me ask you, what is either a fear or an unhelpful belief that's at the root of that self-sabotage? What is either a fear or an unhelpful belief? So I'll give you an example. So first, in the Bono example, I gave one, right? I'm just not good enough to be at this meeting. Nobody wants me to be there. But here's another example. Let's say for you, you consistently overschedule yourself. So then what's the fear or the belief that has you consistently overscheduling yourself? Maybe, for example, it's you have this belief that in order to be successful, you always have to be working or doing something, or you always have to say yes to every opportunity now because there's not going to be opportunities later. Or maybe you have a held belief that it means that you're lazy if you have space for yourself. Right? So take a moment and think on this one. What's a fear or a belief that's at the root of the self-sabotaging behavior?
Hi there. I have something that
Great.
came to mind. Just to give you a little background, I'm from a different generation than a lot of you guys. Just to tell you, I'm going to be married 60 years. So you can understand. Thank you. Without killing each other, guys. But my husband, says we still have time. Anyway, and that's what kept us together, a sense of humor. One of the things that were very much expected of women at one time was to work, run a wonderful house, raise the children, take care of their husband. And so that fear is embedded, especially depending on your background. I come from Italian people. They're all Italian. Of course, I married somebody that was in the next town. Okay. And my attraction to him was that he was very smart. And which was good, right? The point being is that fear of not doing it all and not being perfect is daunting. And what happens is you put yourself on the back burner. You find yourself making sure everybody's eating what they should be eating. You make sure that the kids are dressed a certain way. Then you're worried about that you should have money to educate them. And all of this is kind of expected at one time on women. But I really think things have changed. And I think my generation was very helpful in that.
Yes.
To have people notice. But these things are so deep-seated that it's pretty hard to shake. So, of course, I'm doing a lot better. I'd probably be in a loony bin if I wasn't. But I would say that was one of my self-sabotages.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this share. I think it's so poignant, and there are a couple of pieces I want to pull from it for all of us. First, this, oftentimes we put ourselves and our projects on the back burner because we think everybody else is important. We have to show up a certain way. And then that's a good excuse, right? I mean, sometimes legitimate, sometimes not, for not creating what we want. So thank you for that example. And then the other thing I want to pull on that I think is important about what you're saying is that oftentimes the unhelpful beliefs or the fears that we have, they didn't just come from one place, but it's society taught us this. Where it is so, the messaging is so baked in to our being on it. Another reason why having a coach as a support partner is so valuable, because it can help us see what beliefs we're taking as truth, which are really just messages that we've been given. So thank you so much for that share.
May I say something else?
Of course.
I know what I heard, that you dabble in embracing the shadow. A lot of times the fears that come because it's something that happened in a person's life that they don't want to duplicate, whether it be a mother who wasn't there for them, which I didn't have. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we will talk about that for sure. Yeah, I'm so glad you're tossing it in. Give me a little bit, but we're gonna get there for sure.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's keep on going. So now that we kind of understand what self-sabotage can look like, let's take it a step deeper. And I want to toss the idea that self-sabotage usually happens in a cycle. It usually happens in a cycle. And I'm going to share my screen. This is the only image I'm going to share. But I'm going to share this for a moment. This is what I call the wheel of self-sabotage. So oftentimes it starts up top. We have an unhelpful or limiting thought or belief or a fear. And that unhelpful thought or fear, as hopefully, we've been starting to see, it causes us to take a self-sabotaging action. And then what happens next? We take the self-sabotaging action, and the self-sabotage has a result. The result often mirrors or provides evidence for the original fear or unhelpful thought. It strengthens it. It proves, oh, that's right, I wasn't good enough, or that's right, I needed to be the perfect mother, right? Or whatever it is. And so then it strengthens the original thought or the fear, which then leads to the next self-sabotaging action. So I'll give an example of this. Let's say you start off with a belief that it's really hard for me to date. Maybe the self-sabotaging action that comes from that is you don't put yourself on a dating website. What's the result? No dates. So that reinforces that original belief. It's hard for me to date. And then maybe the next action is you get set up on a blind date and you act really weird, right? Because it's hard for me to date. It's hard for me to date. So you end up acting weird. And then what does that do? It reinforces even more, I'm not good at dating. It's hard for me to date. I'm never going to find someone because it's so hard for me. And then maybe the next time you get set up on a blind date, you don't even go on it. Right? So in essence, the wheel doesn't naturally allow for a positive outcome to happen. You might get lucky and a positive outcome, by chance might happen, but usually it ensures that your client is going to stay in self-sabotage mode. And the wheel is kind of sinister because the cycle produces evidence that is not real of your inability to create what you want. It's like a downward spiral that cycles in on itself. And also when you're on the wheel, it can become a little bit of a shame machine when you're on it over and over and over again. Does that make sense so far? Yeah, go ahead. I mean, we're small enough that if you've got a question, just.
I have a question. When you said about the evidence, you also said, which is not real. What do you mean it's not real?
So let's take the example that I said, right? So the original belief is it's hard for me to date. Then if you take a self-sabotaging action and you don't end up with dates, it's not that, oh, I'm not good enough to, right? Maybe the original is I'm not good enough to date, or I'm too weird to date, or whatever it is. It's just that the action gives this evidence of it that's not true. Does that land for you? I should say everything I share is just tosses, not ever the truth with a capital T. So if you see it a different way, please share, because that's just helpful for everybody too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I see the evidence as evidence because it's what the result is, it's what occurred. But I understand that what we make mean of that evidence, that is not necessarily true, I guess.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. Yes, exactly. So that we decide that it's a foregone conclusion because of the evidence, when really there are other options, other beliefs, other outcomes, but it allows us to see it even less each time we circle the wheel.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. All right, so I would love to give everybody a minute or two right now to draw out how the wheel is maybe playing out for you right now. Maybe it's one of the things you identified earlier, but take a moment and see how this might be playing out for you right now. Right? No matter how much inner work we've done, even for myself, I teach this, I still have my places where I can go deeper in. Take another half minute on that. All right. And let me ask you one more question to think about on this. What I have found, I've seen this for myself, I've seen this for clients, is that when we're on the wheel, in addition to the original limiting belief or fear, just by virtue of being on the wheel, there are new unhelpful beliefs or fears that end up getting created from the wheel. So as an example, back to my Bono example, until that Bono experience, I never, ever thought of myself as irresponsible. That was not an original belief. But because of that experience, that was a new thing that got created from it, right? So think on this as you're looking at your own wheel. Are there any unhelpful thoughts or fears that have evolved for you simply from being on the wheel? Not because they were embedded earlier on.
Joanna, could you please put in each circle there the example of Bono that you said for yourself, just for me to have a sense how to label them in my case?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share the screen again. Great question. So for me, with the Bono situation, the original belief essentially was I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough to be in the room. It led to not showing up and people being upset with me. And that strengthened the original belief of I'm just not good enough, and how stupid, right? And I'm not smart enough. How stupid could I have been to not show up? In my case, this was in the first years of my business, of becoming an entrepreneur. And because of that, that led me to take other self-sabotaging actions in my business. Oh, I don't want to be seen then, so I'm not going to send the newsletter out. I'm not going to ask for the business, right? And it spiraled on itself. Is that helpful, Kayla? Oh, you're on mute. Take yourself off so I can hear you.
Sorry. The self-sabotaging action wasn't showing up. Is that what you said? Or the result was not showing up?
The self-sabotaging action was to not show up for the meeting.
Okay.
The result was that I missed out on a big opportunity, because again, that was the beginning of my business. I could have made connections, etc., which then strengthened for me, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not really wanted, which then led to okay, then I'm not doing my newsletter. which then led to not doing my newsletter. The result was less people asking me about my work, which then strengthened the I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Joanna?
Yeah. Mhm.
This is Louise. Are we saying the results, just the results? It just confirmed it by you not
Exactly.
showing up.
Exactly.
And so it became even deeper in you.
Correct. Yeah, that's why I have strengthened up here, because then it got embedded even more
Yeah.
deeply.
So it became a vicious cycle kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Thank you. That's what I got from it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Who else? Does anyone else want to share what's coming up for you so far? What's coming together? What's feeling important?
I'd like to go through something that and I'm not sure if I'm doing, it's easier to see it in someone else than in yourself. So I'm kind of wondering for myself, like, regarding the pattern and subtle, I have a pattern of, so even here on ICF, right? I have a book club that I do with the community. And for some reason, I wait until the last minute to, I start the book early on, but then procrastinate. And then it's on Thursday, like, oh my God, I have 100 pages to read. And so, and this has been consistent for like 5 years now.
Yeah, I'm so glad that it's coming to the surface through our time together today. Good. Yeah.
And the reason I started the book club is because I love to learn. I love to read, but I'd rather take a class, but classes take much longer, blah, blah, blah. So I said, let me create this book club. That way I get to read, we get to build community, and we share knowledge and blah, blah. But I'm like, why am I waiting until the last minute and creating all this stress for myself, literally self-sabotaging?
Yeah. Did you come up with something for an unhelpful belief?
The only thing that I came up with is, before it was like, I'd buy books, I'd read a little bit of it and not finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, if I do something like this, I get to hold myself accountable. I have to finish it. So the belief is I can't finish books. I don't know. I can't concentrate long enough to finish a book. I don't know. Something like that.
So when you're procrastinating, I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Let me know. I think what I'm hearing you say is that when you're procrastinating on getting started on the book, some of the self-talk is, I can't really finish a book anyway, so why start? I know I'm not really going to get it done. So why should I spend my time now to even start it? Because it's not going to get done anyway. Am I getting that right?
Well, I don't hear myself saying that in the moment. What I hear is, I can do it later. I still have time. I still have time.
Right. So even if you don't hear it in the moment, does that feel accurate though, that that's maybe somewhere even in the background? I'm not going to be able to finish it anyway, so why start now?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Is it okay for us to go a little deeper with this? Where else in your life?
Everywhere.
Okay. Have to say anything more. Okay, so we know that you hit on the right belief there, right? I mean, that is it, right?
Yeah, I'm a great starter. I finish a lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong. Like, I complete things, but it takes something for me to complete something.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. if it's okay, what event or series of events, like what was maybe one of the first events in your life that taught you, I'm not okay because it takes me so long to get things done, or it's not okay because it takes me so long? Where did you learn that from?
I can't go to a specific place. I can't think of it. However, that is true. Not that
it was
it's
just
true.
in the environment. It was in the environment.
Yeah.
Right. So even if there's not, okay, so this is really important, right? Because we can see how, when it comes to the book club or all of these other areas in your life, that wherever you're self-sabotaging by procrastinating, what you're doing is you're taking the then and there and you're projecting it into the here and now moment. Right? It's almost as if in that moment, you forget that you're an adult with adult resources, right? And you're back to being that little girl who needed to believe that for whatever reason. Okay.
Yeah.
There's more we could do with this, but for now, I'll pause. What's feeling important about all of this for you?
Yeah, there's definitely the I'm slow part is very resonates with me. Even in my speaking, like I'm not like I'm slow. But I see that now as I'm older as a gift. I see it as a gift, but clearly it's still showing up in places where I'm sabotaging myself.
Yeah. So this is so beautiful, because this is in part getting into, we're going to start talking about strategy with clients for a moment, but based on what you're sharing, what might be different for you now that we're kind of looking at this and there's so much more awareness this coming month, when you notice that you're procrastinating on starting the book? What might be different if you said, oh, this is because of that old belief that I'm too slow, but I know that my slowness is a gift. What might you do differently with the book club then? What might you do differently with starting to read the book if you could create that awareness in that moment? How does that land for you?
It lands beautifully, because I could literally see myself making time, short snippets of time to because that's what I love to do. Is I want to delve into something. I don't want to surface anything.
I love it. It's so beautiful. So if you were to fully in those moments remember, my slowness is an asset, then you'd make these short snippets of time. That's my homework for you.
Absolutely. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for that share and that little case study for us.
Yeah, I hope it was helpful for everyone too. So
well, we're gonna, you know what, we're gonna now break that down into a process. So you gave us perfect segue into what's next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Whenever I train practitioners, before I get to strategy, I always like to spend time on the human behavior first, like we've done up until now, because it's so important for us as coaches to not just do this, but to really understand what is happening for our clients, right? But so now let's talk about some strategies for supporting our clients off the wheel of self-sabotage. This first strategy happens before you say a word or ask a question to your client. And it is, in my opinion, one of the most important things, not just when it comes to self-sabotage, but in all the ways that we support our clients. And so the first step is to align your energetics. And I'll tell you what I mean by this. Align your energetics. As a practitioner, as a coach, your beliefs, your attitudes, your perspectives, and the energy that you bring to your client and your coaching containers is bar none. So, number one, before you ask a question or make a reflection when it comes to self-sabotage or anything, check your own energetics. Do you have a belief about this client? They're not good enough. I've been a bad coach because they're doing this, right? Etc. So you want to check your energetics, and then along with that, you want to be able to name your energetics for yourself, right? So if you've got, because your client is self-sabotaging, if you've gone into, I'm a terrible coach, I've done something wrong, I don't know how to help, there's something wrong with the client is never going to be able to move beyond this. Oh my gosh, the client is so annoying. Why are they stuck here again? Right? Any of those things, those are our energetics. We need to align those because energy follows energy. If we are believing that we're terrible or they're terrible or there's no way this is going to change or I need to fix this, I need to fix the client, right? Any of the things, that's going to dictate what we say. Our energetics are bar none, always. So I think I have a couple of tips under this if you're following on the worksheet. So the first is, first, check your energetics. The second tip is name them, right? I've just named some of them, see what's going on for you. Another thing to remember under energetics is that self-sabotage is almost always a symptom of fear. And fear is a normal, natural human response to the process of growth. When your client is taking self-sabotaging actions, it is crucial for you to not pathologize it, to not make the actions wrong, to think that the client has gone off course and this is something abnormal. Self-sabotage and fear are normal, right? Because fear inevitably comes up when a human being is stretching, and they've come to us because they want to stretch and grow. So the more that we can move away from something has gone wrong here when self-sabotage happens, and instead be in the place of, oh, they're in a self-growth process, we're going to find a way out of it. This is right. That those are aligned energetics. Energy follows energy. So when a client self-sabotages and we see it as that something's wrong with them or with us, the client is going to pick up on our energy, and then the client is going to be more likely to see it that way. Energy follows energy. So when a client self-sabotages, if we see that as just part of the growth process that we're going to support them with, if we remember that our client is still whole and complete and totally capable, if we remember that we as the practitioner are still whole and complete and totally capable, our client is going to feel that energy and is going to be more likely to see the situation that way as well. That makes sense?
So Joanna, are you basically saying that if we are aware of our thoughts about the client, but we pause that and we put it aside, and then we let whatever is here, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, we also, when I train practitioners, we do a lot of inner work around the I'm not good enough, they're not good enough, what, right? So we want to be doing our inner work around this too. But
Okay.
at a minimum, we want to become aware of the belief or the thought. And like you're saying, put it aside. And then what I recommend is take a moment and feel love and compassion, both for your client and for yourself, right? Open your heart to the both of you. That's going to help with the energetics in that moment, right? As well as remembering that this is just normal. If somebody self-sabotages, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It's part of that process of growth that we've been talking about.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes. And on the worksheet, where is exactly the word align energetics? I'm not finding it. Is this on
So
this one?
on
Is
page
it
5, I have a space for strategy number 1. And strategy number 1 is align your energetics. If that's the right
which
one.
is
I have 2 versions of
helping
the
client?
Is there a page for strategies? Yeah.
Does anyone else has the page? Maybe I have the wrong thing.
So I just posted it in the chat a few moments ago, the worksheet that you provided for us. So hopefully that's the one we're all looking at, I'm assuming.
I see helping clients get off the wheel of self-sabotage resource sheet. That's page
Yes.
5.
Great. And is there room for strategy number 1 there?
No.
Okay, let me hold on. I'm glad you're asking.
Yeah.
Try this link instead. I just put it in the chat. Hopefully it should be there. If not, I apologize and I will get the correct one for you, but know that this was the first strategy, right? The first piece of getting clients off the wheel is we want to align our energetics.
Okay.
Is it okay to move on? And
Yeah,
hopefully
totally
if it doesn't work in the worksheet, you can take notes and I'll make sure that you get the right worksheet.
It's a totally different worksheet.
My mistake. I sent
Great.
Daryl the wrong thing. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so once you have aligned your energetics, here's the next piece or the next strategy. When a client is on the wheel, don't underestimate the power of creating awareness. So remember, one of the most valuable gifts that we have as coaches is that we can provide our clients with greater awareness of their patterns and their habits, the motivation behind those patterns and habits, and the impact of those patterns and habits. Just the awareness alone is so valuable, right? So without a client's awareness that this is happening for them, that they're on the wheel, they are more at the will of the wheel. They're stuck in their reasonable excuses, right? I'm not going to read the book until the last minute, etc. Or not seeing that fear or unhelpful beliefs are at the core. When a client has awareness, they're in a much better position to make more empowering choices for themselves. Awareness creates choices. When clients have awareness, when you co-create that in the session together, they can also start to bring that awareness to the moment of the self-sabotage And then that awareness can help them create some distance from the unsavory feelings of the fears and the beliefs. And then that gives them even more choice to do something different. So you want to use all of your reflecting skills, all of your questioning skills to support your client to see what's happening for them, how the pattern happens, what happens for them internally, externally when they're on the wheel. One great effective way to create awareness on the wheel is to do exactly what we did together, to share a little bit about how the wheel works, and then ask a client to draw it out for themselves or take them through it step by step, right? And ask them questions about it. I oftentimes like to ask a client to draw it out first. And that's because the drawing activates more than just the cognitive level of learning and processing. The doing, the writing activates also the body level of learning and processing. Okay, so we want to create awareness. Let me pause there. Any thoughts or questions on that before we keep on going? No. Okay.
I have a question regarding the wheel. Do you often find, like, where do you often spot it, let's say? Because it's usually not the belief. That
Yeah.
comes kind of later.
Usually when there is non-action on a goal, right? So we've strategized on action steps, and either the action, no action is taken, or it's sabotaged in some way. And then kind of in our next session, the client, I don't understand why I didn't, right?
Yeah.
And so either that, or if over the course of a couple, sometimes you can't notice it in the subtle, the subtle and the patterned right away. So sometimes it's over the course of maybe 2 or 3 sessions, when either something isn't getting done, or you hear more than once, oh, I was just so overscheduled last week that I didn't get to write my newsletter, or I didn't get to do the outreach, right? Then you will want to start to inspect, well, what do you mean that you're overscheduled? What has that looked like? And then you kind of get deeper into that. So I always say coach the what based on the who. It's going to look different, with each client, but those are some ways to spot it.
So I'm almost hearing like, if you can see where people are out of integrity, there's a good possibility that sabotage is there, or self-sabotage is there.
I love how you're putting that. Yes.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Once you've co-created awareness with your client, then the next step on supporting them off the wheel is a pattern break, right? Because the wheel is a cycle, is a pattern. The creating awareness might be enough to break the pattern, but usually we'll want to bring in some bigger guns for that. And you actually want to break the pattern in 2 different ways. So the first pattern break, this is strategy number 3, is the inner pattern break. Starting to break the pattern on the inner level. So in other words, working with the fear or the limiting belief or the resistance that is at the root of the wheel. Okay. Usually if you don't touch the I'm not good enough, or I'm too slow, or I never, if you don't touch it at all, you could maybe band-aid the problem for a little bit, but it's going to come back, right? So you want to work on that inner pattern break. Now, this is really important. The pattern break in order to get a client off the wheel, it doesn't have to include completely shifting the belief or completely reworking the relationship with the fear, because that often takes time and consistency, right? I always say there's a difference between a breakthrough and a transformation. Breakthrough is a piece of new awareness, a new idea, etc. But that's not transformation, which is real and long-lasting change. We need to consistently apply the breakthroughs, right? So don't feel like you have to completely eradicate the inner obstacle in order for your client to start making progress towards their goals. The inner pattern break just simply needs to be enough so that your client creates enough awareness and space between the wholeness of who they are and the part of themselves that holds the fear and the belief. Usually that space through the awareness will create enough of an opening of inspiration and motivation for your client to take the next baby action. And then over time, you're consistently working on the transformation there. So obviously we don't have time today to get into how to work with the fear or how to work with the unhelpful belief. And I'm assuming that most of you already have some tools in your coaching toolbox for working with fear and resistance and all of that. But I will just share a couple of tips that can enhance the tools that you already have for fears, limiting beliefs, etc. First one, we already covered this, but I cannot underscore it enough when it comes to any kind of fear or limiting belief. Normalize, don't pathologize. When I am working, and I work usually somatically with my clients, with their fears, the foundation of all of this is that it is normal to have fear. And the idea, and this is important because there's a lot in the coaching industry that says otherwise, and you can try this on for yourself. Like I said, I'm not saying the truth with a capital T, it's just what I've seen. What we don't want to do is eradicate the fear. We don't want to slay the fear. We don't want to destroy the fear. And we don't even want to let go of the fear. And you might be saying, huh? And I'm going to explain. Our fears are not meant to be vanquished. We need our fears because they're related to our survival strategies. We get into trouble when the fear comes up when it doesn't need to come up, right? So the metaphor that I always like to use with this is your smoke alarm in your kitchen, right? Emergency, emergency, right? And when it goes off, you don't want to go without a smoke alarm in your kitchen because there might actually be a fire, right? And that's going to tell you run out of the house, get water, like do all the things. But the more that you can fine tune the smoke alarm, it will know the difference between an actual fire and burnt toast. So what I always say to practitioners is that you don't want to destroy the fear or let it go. You want to support your clients to become better friends with the fear. Okay. When we support clients to become better friends with the fear, then they can better know the difference between a past risk that threatened their survival and a current risk that they actually can endure. There's obviously so much to this. It takes me a lot of time to go deep in the training of all of this, but I'm just kind of giving you a few things to think about.
Can you repeat this last thing, Joanna, that you said?
Yeah. When we can support our friends to become better and better friends with our clients, it helps them another way of saying it is it helps them distinguish between the then and there and the here and now. Right. So I was working with Nanor on that just a little bit in a tiny little way earlier when she could see that I'm slow and that is to my disadvantage was something she needed to believe for survival when she was younger. But actually, that doesn't have to be true in the present day. It helped her see the difference between the then and there and the here and now. One just last little tip I'll give on working with fear, and I didn't get to demonstrate it this time around, but I have found that the most effective way to support clients to become friends with their fears is to work not only on the cognitive level, but also on what I call the heart level, having them connect to their emotions, on the body level, feeling in their body, and then also what I call the spirit level, which is you don't have to believe in God or anything to activate the spirit level. It's about connecting with a higher wisdom, connecting with a truth that is bigger than your ego, because that's where we trust in things that are bigger than our ego, whether it's spirit or whatever it is. So that's why I often like to work with fear somatically, because it's not just let me think my way out of this a lot of the time. Okay, I'm gonna keep on going because of time. So we spoke about an inner break. Strategy number 4, or the next step, which is equally as important, is we also want to support our clients to make an outer pattern break, which means taking a different action, right? So once we start to work on the inner pattern, like I said, we don't have to do the whole thing, forever and always. We do that over time. But as we start to, as soon as a first session on it, it often creates enough of an opening of motivation and inspiration for our client to be willing to take a different outer step, right? To choose something else. When a client has been on the wheel, what I find is almost always important is for that break on the outer to be a small, baby, very doable step. So you want to strategize with your client around a smaller step. So in other words, let's say they've been putting off getting their newsletter out. Instead of, you're going to write a whole newsletter this week and send it out, maybe the first step is to decide what the topic is and outline the different points that you want to make, right? Then you get to the next step and the next step. So that inner pattern break, if it's too big, they're just going to almost always end up back on the wheel. But if it's small enough, right? And then what happens? The wheel reverses. If they're able to take a small step forward, that produces a different kind of evidence, right? An evidence that counters the original unhelpful belief or fear. And then you capitalize on that, you leverage that into the next action step, and then strengthens, et cetera, et cetera. Here's something that I think is important for practitioners to be thinking about and be aware of when we go to work on outer pattern breaks with our clients. And this is even if we've done the most phenomenal inner work with them on the belief or the fear, this is still almost always true. Breaking pattern at the outer level, the action level, is usually uncomfortable, right? Even if you've worked your fear deeply, taking a different action is uncomfortable, period. Let's normalize that and not pathologize that as well, right? So the outer pattern break, we have to be willing for our clients have to be willing to be uncomfortable in order to take it, right? So if they think it's going to be all unicorns and rainbows because we've worked with a fear and then no, right? So we want to prepare our clients for that, right? You're going to feel the stretch because it's a stretch. That doesn't mean that you're not going to do it. You're not meant to do it. You can't do it. It just is. Sometimes I see coaches where they just expect it to be easy for the client to take the step or what, right? But it's just, we need to accept the discomfort. And then I'm going to take it a step further and say this. People generally hate to be uncomfortable. Oftentimes because they conflate discomfort with pain. They believe that just because it's going to feel like a stretch and uncomfortable, that it's going to be painful. But it's important for us to hold for our clients and help them see that discomfort and pain are two very different things. And that it's okay to be uncomfortable. I believe that as coaches, part of our job is to sometimes lead our clients into discomfort and then to help them get comfortable with the discomfort. Sometimes part of the work of that is undoing what we've learned from culture around discomfort and pain. Also, we as practitioners have to be willing to hold space for our clients' discomfort. Right? So that means we have to be comfortable with our own discomfort as well. So if as I'm sharing this, you're starting to notice for yourself, ooh, I don't like being uncomfortable. Great, maybe invitation to do some of your own inner work around that, because back to energetics, energy follows energy. If you as the coach are uncomfortable, don't like discomfort, if you see it as not a good thing, you don't ever want to be uncomfortable, you don't ever want your clients to be uncomfortable, it is going to be hard to hold the space for your clients to make these outer pattern breaks. That makes sense? Okay, let me pause there because that was just a mouthful in terms of the inner pattern breaks and the outer pattern breaks. I'm sure there's a lot of questions or thoughts or whatever. I think we have time for one or two, and then I'll get to the fifth, the last part of the strategy. But I'd love to hear what's clicking, what's coming together, what's feeling important, or what questions you have so far.
Joanna?
Yeah.
So as we're going through this class, I understood that this is more for situations where we do not have action, right? What if, is there any way that it cannot be applied to a situation where you have an action, okay, you have the fear, and then even though you have the fear or the belief, the limiting belief, you have the action, but the actions result in, again, like making you aware again that, that fear may be true. I don't know. It's just something that, because I could come up with two examples in my life. One is totally applicable, and the other one is like, well, but this one, I wish I could apply this, this class to a situation where I have action, but it doesn't give me the results that I would love to.
Yeah, it's such a great question. So I'm going to give you two answers, not one. It's okay. The first is self-sabotage doesn't always look like non-action, right? It can look like action, but you've messed it up in some way, right? You end up saying that thing that like grinds into someone, right? And then they get angry. Right? So I don't want anyone to think that self-sabotage is only procrastination or non-action. Right? It can be that. So for those situations, everything that we're looking at applies. Now you bring up, I don't know if this is what you meant, but I'm also going to say like a scenario number two, which I think is a great thing. Sometimes we do the exact right thing, right? The exact thing that we were supposed to do. And then it doesn't work out. And then it's strength. And we may have had that belief already or not, I'm not good enough, but we did it anyway. And we did it so right. And then it didn't work out, right?
Yeah.
We can still use so much of what we're looking at today on this, right? We can still work the fear or the unhelpful belief. We can still support our client to become more comfortable with discomfort so that they continue to take action. And then, of course, as coaches, there are other things we can do. We can assess the action. We can look at what worked, what didn't work, what might we want to do differently next time. We maybe, there's so many different scenarios. We maybe support a client. Maybe what we see through it is that a client has an unhelpful belief of it needed to happen on the first try. And if it didn't happen on the first try, then I've failed and it's never going to happen, right? So then we were going to work that belief. So there's lots of different ways we can, work it, but so many of the foundations that I'm sharing now, I apply. Does that land for you, what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay, great. I'm so glad you asked. Okay. Last piece, important piece. I already mentioned it actually, but I'm going to mention it again. Remember that there is a difference between a breakthrough and a transformation. Too often, what I see coaches do is they work on a thing once with a client in one session, but then it's not picked up again, or the consistent inner action isn't taken to really support the real change, the new habit, the new belief, the new way of being. Remember that transformation almost never happens as a once and done. Even if it looks like a once and done, there's a whole domino effect that if you start to look, you'll see, right? To help your clients take their breakthroughs and apply them consistently on the inner and outer level to create the real change. No, we did it by before 3:30, but before we break, I'd love for everybody to write down. Hopefully you're taking away a lot from our time together today, but maybe what's the most important things that you're taking away?
I would say one thing for me is that, this is going to happen. We're going to sabotage ourselves, and to maybe give us a little bit of understanding and grace when we are finding ourselves in this, because, and then go like, okay, after we do that and give ourselves that little time to kind of step back and say, but why am I doing this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again? Because and that's the real big thing is, as Lenore had shared earlier, as well as Louise and others, and Giselle, and about how we get into these, we get into these kind of patterns, and I think that's that breakthrough moment. The more breakthroughs we have, the sooner we can get to transformation, right, Joanna? And I think just always looking at those small little breakthroughs that we have, and I think it also comes to that thing of myself. I was joking about the whole denial earlier, but I think that, at least for myself, that's part of it. But to be able to kind of get that quiet time and journal and think, why am I doing this? Why am I sabotaging myself? And then we have these skills now. We have these skills that you gave us, these tools that you gave us in that worksheet, so we can kind of go through our own thing. Because maybe some of us kind of did it right now in these last 90 minutes, but I bet a lot of us, myself included, it's like, well, I'm going to kind of get to that later. But to have that resource to be able to do that and engage in that difficult work, but work that's not going to only help ourselves, but our clients and other people we engage with on a regular basis, right? Because we not only sabotage our professional life, we sabotage our personal life all the time. So thank you. This was wonderful. A lot to think about, and so that's just my little takeaway. So thank you.
I'm so glad. Yeah. And I feel like that was actually like a great quick synopsis of so much of what we looked at. So thank you for that also. Anybody else want to share what you're taking away, or any last questions before we wrap? No?
Just really quick, I really loved what you said, normalize, don't pathologize, because sometimes, I'm talking about myself. Something, again, I'm going to do this, and then we end up like being so, so mean to ourselves and pathologizing our fears. So that's a great takeaway that I'm taking from this class. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad that you're taking away that. In and of itself is such a game changer, right? If we can have more compassion, if we can know I'm normal when it comes up, right? Because what happens when we pathologize, then we just dump shame on top of the fear or the belief, right? I mean, so yeah, just the remembering that it's all normal. I am a normal human being.
I like the metaphor of the smoke alarm. And for me, fear is a messenger. So
yeah, I'm so glad. Yeah, because we don't want to get rid of the smoke alarm. We need it, right? But we just want that to be better for us.
I like the oftentimes people, confuse the discomfort for pain. So my coworker and I, she's sitting over here too, but so we work with foster youth, and so that's a very common thing. Like, they don't want to do things that push them into discomfort because it can be a reminder of pain that they've already experienced or something they don't want to go through again. So that was good to hear that, and like that we need to normalize the discomfort for them.
Yes, I love that. I love the application of that. Feels really, really important. Thank you.
What helped me is that I have to remind myself to be a friend to myself.
Yes, we all need that. We
all need to remind it. And also, whenever I run into any challenges, to answer the challenges like I'm talking to one of my friends. And I have to keep reminding myself, because my personality is one of being a caretaker. Yeah. And as I started, I put myself last on the totem pole, and I have to remind myself that I don't have to be first, but I should have more compassion. And you reminded me of that, and I thank you very much.
You're so welcome. And I just through your shares, Louise, I can see how caretaking is one of your superpowers. And I think one of the things I'm hearing you say is that you're realizing that you can use that superpower more for yourself. as well.
Yes, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Daryl, I'm going to let you take it away.
Hey, all right. Thank you again, Joanna, and for all of you who were able to be here. I had a couple of messages saying that some people had to get off a little early, which is fine and everything. And we did record this, and there were some people who weren't able to be with us today, so they'll have access to this recording. And we'll be sure to I save that link that you gave us. So for anybody who needs that other link, I will make sure I get that out to our members and everything. So again, thank you for being here. And this was a great topic. As you can see, there was a lot of good sharing, but also I think some good kind of processing that's going on with all of us. So thank you again. I do want to just share really quickly. I'm putting in the chat room there the link to our events here for the ICF Orange County chapter. We do have we are getting close to the end of the year here, as we are here in early November, but we do have some more things coming up. In fact, this Thursday, in 2 days, we have the book club led by our own Nanor, who is right here. And I'm not going to ask you where you are in that book, Nanor. I'm going to, you've already kind of disclosed that earlier. So, but it's a book called, oh, there you have it right in front of you. They're very good. Burnout Prescription for Healthcare Professionals, 10 Things You Can Do Today to Prevent or Recover from Burnout, by a local author here in Orange County. Also, next Thursday is our chapter meeting, which is going to be featuring Sharon Carroll, who's on the board of directors, as well as Lori Banks, who some of you may know. And it's going to be a session on deeper coaching, how to help clients who are successful yet stuck, stressed, or depressed. And that might be some of that sabotage that we have as well. So that might even kind of inform some of that for those of you who are able to go next Thursday. That's going to be here locally at Hera Hub in Irvine. In December, we have a Dr. Jonathan Wrights, who is an MCC, and he's going to lead us and guide us through this process of building a year in review process and how your year ended. And then we have things already scheduled for next year. So I just want to be mindful of that we have some things scheduled in January and February. We also have a holiday party coming up. We're still finalizing details on that. So be on the lookout for that. And one last thing, it's election season. No, not because it's November 7th and elections in some states, but it's election seasons for our ICF chapters. So be on the lookout for an email as we elect our new board of directors for 2024. And again, thank you for being here and spending time with us today. And we hope to see some of you at some of our in-person meetings who are able to, who are a little closer to us here in ICF Orange County, or of course on our virtual meetings. And as always, we give our thanks and appreciation to our presenters, because if it wasn't for our presenters, we wouldn't have a reason to join here, for these sessions here. So thank you again, Joanna. And I look forward to our paths crossing again in the months and years to come. So again, thank you for being here.